Just to be able to move yourself into a better spot to where you are right now. And I couldn't have had a more apt person this afternoon. I'm in conversation with a life coach and international speaker. Her name is Sister Lydia Rue, and she's going to be discussing the importance of women empowerment in the business space. Lydia is one of South Africa's foremost speakers on self-mastery as well as on leadership development, and ardently shares her knowledge and experiences with her audiences and others. Her uniquely warm approach for the well-being of each of her delegates made her one of the most sought-after speakers, trainers, and coaches currently in South Africa. And she's going to be talking to us about women empowerment and the business space. A very warm welcome.
Good afternoon, and I hope you can hear me. I am a bit in the dark here because I can't hear you now, but thank you so much for having me, and I'm absolutely delighted to share a bit of positivity in this dark world for today.
Yes, that's what we've been looking forward to. There's been so much a problem with, the COVID-19 and the issues that we've been facing recently. So it's so nice to have you joining us this afternoon. And of course, enticing us, I think, in a different space and sphere, which I think is important, especially now. People are looking for different things to do to be able to, especially women, to be able to move themselves into a better spot.
For sure. And I think, the issues that we're dealing with today are so absolutely unique to the situation that we find ourselves in. What we knew yesterday and the year before is not relevant anymore. And so how do we keep ourselves relevant, not only as women and mothers, but also as women in business? Because, the well-being of our staff is paramount. We now go into a situation where we call people and say, you are on a roster. So you only work 3 days a week, or it's 1 week on and 1 week off. And so to keep ourselves positive, to keep ourselves in the right frame of mind, mental state is so, so important. But also, having said that, is to take care of the people that work with me in my teams. People go through so many different issues at this stage, whether it's financial, whether it is relationships. I now have to go to work, but my kids are at home. There's nobody to look after them. So now I get to work and I need to be 100% focused on what I need to deliver. But at the end of the day, I've got such divided focus. So how do I actually mentally prepare myself for all of that? And it's a very unique situation. And I think a situation, Nafisa, that calls for emotional intelligence in a big, big way. And sadly, I think that's one of the development areas that has been left behind for quite a number of years. We talk about it, and some companies have actually gone into that space of focusing and training, what they call EQ, emotional quotient. And for me, it's always about the holistic approach. So if we say emotional quotient, it means 1/4 of what it means to be emotionally intelligent. Where does the spiritual, the personal, and the mental part of the emotions of all of us come into play? And I think that is the area.
If you're not there on a holistic level, then what happens is actually you tend to find yourself in a space where you actually don't know what direction you have.
Very much so, because we're pulled into all different directions. I do need my job, so I have to focus 100% of my attention on that. At the same time, I've got a family that might be in distress. I might have family members outside my home that's in distress. And so just to keep that body, mind, spirit connectedness right now is really so, so important for all of us. And again, how do I do that? Part of the well-being of human beings is the fact that I do take time to meditate, that I do take time to be quiet, that I do take time to exercise. I can't stress that enough. And of course, I do eat healthily, because now is the time where we jump into the carbs because that's the comfort food. But at the end of the day, it's really just got the opposite effect to what we really need from an emotional, holistic perspective right now.
Yes, I so agree with you there. As I said, being holistic in the workspace is equally as important, because it's how much we can actually put out there, and people perceive you in the workspace for what you can give back. And I think that's very important. A lot of the times, we don't realize that the caliber that we actually put out there is very important, because that's the perception that we're creating about the brand itself, but not just only ourselves as such.
Very much so, because I mean, you are a brand, no matter what position you hold in any work environment. Your name, you are the brand. And so how and what do you put out there? How do you take care of the you? And I think as women in the workplace, we've got such a big role to play. And that links onto the empowerment of women, because I want to touch, with permission, Afisa, also on the young adult and the young female, because, we tend to forget that they're out there in areas that might be not as conducive to the empowerment of women, where the dignity of women is affected in a big way. And so then we expect them to come into the workplace and feel empowered and act empowered, but it starts at such an early age. And again, as women in the workplace, what we do, how we share our knowledge and our information and our positive mind frame is such an important tool for everybody to take to their homes and spread it, pay it forward.
Most definitely. Would you agree that I think, going forward is to be able to bridge the gap? I always talk about bridging this gap, is to actually teach women, this young women that are out there that are going to go into the workspace, give them that type of tools to take with them prior to them actually starting in the workspace. So basically, once they get in there, they're literally kind of ready in some way and knowing what to expect. Because a lot of the times you find young people coming out of a tertiary education or getting into the workspace, not understanding what to expect and what is needed of them. And of course, also from a holistic level, as you were saying, I don't think they know how to carry themselves forward as such, because it's something relatively new to them.
Very much so. And as you rightfully pointed out, I don't think enough attention is paid and placed in that area of development of our young females. Because, not only is it the way they carry themselves and the way they dress, but also the way they speak. Because the professionalism and the dignity and the audience that they hold really comes from within. So, in my book on leadership that I published, I specifically talk about discipline and humbleness together with grace. We are so absolutely unique in our being. And so what is it that makes them unique that they can spread and share with the rest of the world? And I think, Nafisa, if we can spend more time in allowing each of those young females, young women entering the corporate world for the first time to identify their uniqueness, what is it that they bring to the table, and focus on that more rather than only on what they can't do. I think we'll go a long way.
Because in a workspace, and especially here at Salam Media, what I really love is we're literally like a family. And the workspace, as you were saying, is so important, because we're always enticing each other in a positive sense. And I think it makes such a difference, because when somebody makes you feel as good as they do, it actually changes your perception of yourself, and you actually want to go forward and do actually much better than you did before. So it's having to, also with young people, I think when they start, like you were saying, in the field, is making them understand the potentials that they have, and that they can do it with those potentials. But it's obviously, there's each one of us have had those starter pointers, and it's how we build ourselves from that. And I think people like you, it's amazing to see that you're in the field. I really appreciate that fact, because what happens is you're there to direct. And that's the whole idea, is women, even in an older space, that want to change something that they've been doing better, and wanting to actually go out there and be their best.
is where you fit in, because you're kind of giving them the direction. I think sometimes somebody like yourself looking in from the outside actually makes the difference as far as empowerment is concerned. Because at times we might not even pick up the things that we're doing that are wrong. We could be doing those same things time and again and asking ourselves the question, then why is it we're not moving forward?
Absolutely. And that is where that emotional intelligence come into play again, where I am open-minded enough for my colleague, my friend, anybody out there to give me feedback, to say, let's, hang on, girl, this is not the way it should be done. Maybe consider another way. And then to be open-minded enough to accept that as constructive feedback and not just see that as a destructive process of breaking me down, but rather building me up. And I think if we can get to a stage, Nafisa, where we can focus on enabling women of all ages to be the best that they can be, and allowing them to understand that consequence living is part of today. It's part of the way forward. What I do today and the actions I partake in will have an effect, whether that's going to be positive or otherwise, but it's my choice. And I think that choice that we have to want to make a difference is what's going to separate, the mediocre from the outstanding entrepreneurs and women out there.
Would you say, and I believe in this, is always taking the positive criticism, as you're saying, and turning it for the better. But it's also about encouraging each other and creating those support structures within the environment so that we could help each other grow as such.
Very much so. And that's where coaching plays such an important role. The lonely marathon runner out there has got a coach. So find yourself either a life coach or a business coach and listen, ask questions, get feedback, because a coach is there to help you and to guide you. A coach is not there to tell you what to do. I always say, if you come up with one solution, that's a problem. If you have two options, that's a dilemma. But if you have three options, then you have a choice. So sit back, look at the opportunities, identify which one would carry more pros than cons, and bounce those ideas off the people that you trust.
Yes, I agree with you there. And that's the way we're going to grow, is learning from, all of us learn as we go along, and we do, of course, err at some point in our environment, but it's what we learn from it, and having to move ourselves forward from that's going to actually matter, because that's what's going to make us learn and understand. It's the same thing like a young person, we learn all the time, irrespective of our ages. And in that type of environment, that's what's important, is to learn from each other. And as you were saying, is giving each other that positive criticism, which is going to make us move forward in many directions.
Very much so. And that will also help us to stay current. Because as leaders and women in business, especially, because, let's face it, it's a tough world for women out there in business today, regardless of all the work that has been done and everything that has been said. It is still a very difficult environment. And if we're not going to stay current with the latest news, trends out there, and helping one another, taking hands and moving forward together, we're certainly never going to get to that aha moment of making a difference in one person's life. Because that, to me, is my mission. If I can make a difference in one person's life every day, my existence is worthwhile.
I so agree with you there. It's amazing how we sync here, because you literally have the same outlook as what I do. It's so nice knowing that at the end of the show, if we've just moved somebody forward into a better space from where they were before, it's good enough for us, because that's the purpose we serve. Each one of us serves a purpose in this world, and it's about building bridges and building each other up as opposed to breaking each other down. And what advice would you give? Because a lot of the times you find yourself in this work environment where women, instead of trying to build each other up, in many environments, you find them trying to break each other down, because there's this relative competition going on. And I don't think that's a healthy environment to be in.
Not at all. However, that is real. And I always say to my coaches, stay authentic, be who you are. don't try and compromise. Don't try and be somebody else. From an NLP perspective, I'm very much for modeling success, which means I'm going to look at what you're doing good and great. I'm going to focus on the positive, and I'm going to model and mimic that so that I can also be and do like you do. It's not about what you're doing wrong. And I think, Nafisa, if we can focus on just looking for the good that people do. Look, we all do wrong, and we're not going to like everybody equal. I think that is just the fact of life. However, we can always respect one another regardless.
That's so true. I agree with you. What sort of pointers would you give women to be able to actually move themselves up into different positions that they're in from an empowerment point of view? I would say one of them would be perseverance is key, because a lot of the times you find yourself in this space and you're trying and you're almost there, and that's when you give up. And I think that's a lot of the instances where people actually make that mistake.
Yeah. Many people give up just that one step before the winning line. So that's very true. But yes, perseverance. And I think determination is another one. If you are determined enough to reach your ultimate goal in your career, there's nothing that's going to stop you. You might have to take one step back and two sideways to move forward. But giving up is never an option. It should not even be part of your vocab. I hope you don't know how to spell it, because that is one of those things that we do so easily. It's just to sit back and say, okay, well, I didn't succeed, so therefore I'm not good enough. And my message to everybody today is, you are good enough. You are enough, because you are who you are. You've got a role to play in society. You've got such a huge role to play in business and in your family. So just own that space. Yes, we're going to have those areas where we're going to fall down from time to time, but it's your choice to stand up, get up, show up, and be.
That is so true. I think it's about, looking at yourself in the positive sense and telling yourself that these are my potentials and this is what I can do, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
That's all it always takes.
That's all it takes. You're right.
Yeah.
What message would you like to leave our listeners with this afternoon?
Nafisa, for me, probably the most important part or fact in today's environment and society that we're in is that as women, we carry a very heavy load from an emotional perspective. And so I really want to urge women out there to focus on, how can I make myself feel better from an emotional and mental perspective. And again, I'm going to touch on the 3 areas that I mentioned earlier, and that is to really eat well. It's so easy to go to the wrong foods because they comfort foods, but they don't help us. Exercise and stay positive. The positivity, if you put it out there, it's going to attract. You're going to attract that positivity, because whatever you spread is going to come back to you. As mothers of the nation, we've got such an important role to play with young people. And so to always make them feel that whatever comes our way, we can deal with it. It is part of a process, and to be emotionally stable enough to do that. And I want to urge you, if you're not and you feel you need help, please reach out, because that's all it takes is maybe one phone call to one person that could change everything and your whole life. So never be afraid to reach out.
And especially during this period of time, people have been going through so many difficulties. And what I want to tap on quickly before we leave is the grieving part. I think many women that are in the empowerment space are having to go into work and deal with having to empower themselves, but have still, come across, maybe they're grieving a loss in the family. People are literally dying every single day with this COVID-19 situation. And it's having to try and deal with that, because a lot of the times you find that, that particular space of empowerment is not the same due to that grief. What would you advise them?
From a grieving perspective, one of the biggest challenges that we have is first anger. We deal and we go through an angry stage. So why did this happen to our family? Why did it happen to this person? And then we go into a denial state to say, I can't believe it actually happened, So those are processes that we have to go through. So my message to them is, don't try and don't deal with it. Deal with the emotions. They're there for a reason. Emotional intelligence tells us that if we don't go and work through those emotions, if we bottle them up and we put them under the carpet and we hide them away, they're just coming to haunt you later on in a bigger way, and probably at a time that you can least afford it.
That
And
is so true. Lydia,
so deal with it.
would you agree with me? And I don't know if I stand to be corrected here, but I have a way of doing things. I always believe in leaving my baggage at the door the minute I walk into my workspace, and dealing with it when I get out of it. Because obviously, when you're in that type of emotional state, irrespective of what you're going through, it could be a challenge, it could be a loss. You're not going to give it your best in your workspace as such. So for me, I always leave my baggage at the door and pick it up when I'm going back again.
It's very wise and true advice to do that, is to leave the slippers by the door as you walk in and put on the high heels and be very smart, but own it again as you walk out. Having said that, I think we also need to just be mindful that we are still one human being. We still have a thought process that will take us to those areas that we really want to run away from during that time that are at work. And so to give yourself that time to say, okay, well, I'm thinking of that. Catch yourself. Can I do anything different now? No, I can't. Let me make a note of my thought now. And when I leave, I take my notepad with me.
You know
because
what?
the minute
I'm going to interrupt you here, because I just got a message from Fatima Mohammed, and she says, I'm inspired. Well done, ladies. I needed to hear this.
Oh, fantastic, Fatima.
And she says, work through emotions, acknowledge and accept.
There we go. And it's so true. We can't deny them because they're part of who we are. And so for me, I always say, write them down. Write that emotion down, whether it's a happy emotion or a sad one. But give yourself time afterwards in your own space, in your own comfort place, to work through that. But don't not acknowledge that.
Thank you so much. You were so inspirational this afternoon. I think you've lifted my spirits as well. So you got me thinking a lot about a lot of things that I can do better in my workspace. And I think that's amazing. But maybe I can adopt you as my life coach.
There we go. I'd love to.
There we go. You can be my Salam Media life coach. But I want to thank you so much for inspiring us this afternoon. I think you've left us with a lot of good food for thought. And I think women will be enticed. Look at, including Fatima, that's just sent this message, has been inspired. And I think that's what it's about, is getting into that space and using our platforms to inspire people into better spaces and places.
I think that's our mission. And if we don't do that, we fail.
Well, just hearing from Fatima, we've reached one purpose for the day. So thank you so much for allowing us to do
there
so.
There we go.
It's been nothing but a pleasure chatting to you, Lydia. And we hope we can catch up with you real soon. But in the interim, do stay safe. And we love you lots here at Salam Media. And do take care of yourself.
Thank you so much. And you too. Keep well. And thanks for the opportunity.
So the pleasure was ours. Take care. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That was Lydia Roux, definitely enticing us into a better space and a better place, thinking about business empowerment and what we can do, looking at ourselves and reflecting and asking ourselves, how can we better ourselves? But of also, of course, not forgetting to create the support structure for each other so we can help each other grow. We're going to go for a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back with you in a short while.
يا رب العالمين